Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Davis. I'm glad you're here today, but before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. So, what I would love for you to do is wherever you're listening to this episode, take a screenshot. And with that screenshot, I want you to post it on LinkedIn and tag me. And the reason why I do that is not so much for download numbers or all those things that, quite honestly, I really don't even track too much. But what I know is that there's far too many leaders who really don't understand how to cultivate and build the external influence that the new world demands. And when these episodes are shared, it will expose them to the signals that they need to develop in order to lead better. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. I'm going to read my guest's bio and then we'll get to what I believe will be a great conversation. My guest today helps leaders hire smarter by turning their company story into a magnet for the right talent. After building and selling his first startup, he joined another early stage company as a founding executive, helping raise nearly $14 million dollars while building sales and marketing from the ground up. Like many startups, their early hires came from their networks, but scaling beyond that was a challenge. With 30 plus years in recruitment and firsthand experience growing tech companies, he saw the need for a better way. And that's why he built Pivot and Edge to help startups attract, hire, and retain the talent that drives real growth. I want to welcome to the show EA Clarke.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad that you're here. You work with startups, I work with startups, and so I'm really anxious to have this conversation because what I've noticed over the years is that startups, especially if they're in the tech world or in the STEM world, there used to be a time where if we had a strong product and the right team, that was all it took, and we really focused on developing our leaders for internal leadership and influence, but very seldom did we think about the signals that we're sending externally that is going to
Mhm.
help us attract the right
Yeah,
people to work for us. Help investors feel confident that we actually have a leadership team that's good beyond
yes.
building the thing. And so I'm really anxious to have this conversation with someone else that recognizes that external influence is just as important once you hire the right people as it is for internal. And so today we're really going to be talking about storytelling and employer branding that is going to help these companies attract high performing talent. But before we get into the crux of the conversation, how is, if at all, employer branding different than just the way the company is branding themselves in general?
Uh, so the employer brand is the definition of what's attractive to a particular partner, customer, um, in potential employee candidate. Uh, the marketing brand or the product brand is all about features and benefits of what the product could do, the pain it can solve. But that has nothing to do with telling the story of what's it like to work inside my company.
Yeah.
What's the culture of the person that I actually want? So we're not interested in having conversations about the colors that you use or the logo and what it looks like or your product and the kind of customers your product is solving problems for. This is all about having conversations with founders and high tech executives that can say, look, you've done something special here. You grew something. You're a founder of something. You did it for a reason.
Yeah.
There's there's motivation behind that. There's a vision. There's a mission, and you actually want people in your company, particularly in the early stages, they need to relate to that vision. They need to relate to the story that you have.
Yeah.
Um, I had a conversation with a customer not long ago, and he described it like I think he described it really well. He said, so what I like about your solution, EA, is like pivot and edge solution is you don't attract bricks into the pond, you attract pebbles.
Yeah.
And I think what he's meaning by that, and I know what he means by that, is the brick can have all the requirements of the role. It can have the experience you need. It can have the tech stack experience you need. It can have, that. table stakes of list of things that you come to the role with. But if you're not a cultural fit, you're a brick and you create
Yes.
waves, and waves are a problem. What I need is all those requirements that are critically important, but I need you to be a pebble in my company. You
Hmm.
make waves, you do it properly, you transition things, you take us forward, but it's not disruptive. And
Yeah.
in the early stages, honestly, disruption is a very serious problem. And we try to not have that happen with our hiring process because we market first.
Yeah. I love that distinction because, I think that most people have branding wrong in general because they do think it's about colors and typography and logo and all of that. But very few companies are recognizing the distinction that you just said of like your company has a brand in terms of the product or the service that it sells, but it should also have a brand that demonstrates who you are as a people and what it would be like to partner with you. And I think that your employees are partners. One of the things that I would love to hear you talk about is that when a lot of leaders hear storytelling, they think marketing. So, how is storytelling actually a talent strategy?
Well, the story that you want to tell is going to attract people to your opportunity. So, I honestly, every founder I've ever met, given the opportunity to tell the story about how they started it, or what problem they decided they want to solve, and likely it was a problem or a piece of pain that they actually had, and said, I'm not going to let this happen anymore. I got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Or in our case, we've looked at a traditional industry called recruiting, and we just looked at it and went, it's broken. It's terrible. People don't like recruiters. Uh, we want to do something about it. And so if you asked me to tell you the story about Pivot and Edge, I can go on and on about how I uncovered the opportunity, where the pain exists, the people I've talked to. So that's the crux of it. Every founder, every early stage company executive, and the early stage executives that they hire
Mhm.
probably have the same story. I visited a customer the other day, and he basically bought this very large manufacturing facility. It's got to be 2 football fields big, and
Wow.
right now it only takes up space with a very very small piece. And I said to him, I said, so if you had your vision, your wish, will you ever fill all this? And he looks at me and says, and 4 more of them.
Oh, wow.
So that's the story though, right? Like this guy's not doing this because it's a job. He's got
Yeah.
a vision, he's got a mission. He's working out of a small little office upstairs at this giant facility. And in his mind, it's like, look out.
Yeah.
This is going to be very big. And so those are the stories that we capture. And when candidates hear those stories, they're usually on one side of the fence or the other. They go, oh, early stage, it's risky. I'd like to work for someone that's, it's established, it's got cash, or maybe it's more government related, it's maybe a little more safe. That's what I want. Or someone will listen to that story and go, oh my gosh, the earlier I get in, the more I'm going to feel that story. I'm going to work when there's hardly anything in the manual. I can't wait to fill that space, right? So
Exactly.
that's the story we tell, and that's why we attract particular talent that way.
One of the things that I see as a competency gap, specifically among technical leaders, and the reason why I do the work that I do is that so sometimes the founder is really good at this, not always, but very seldom is like their CTO or their VP of engineering really trained to know how to talk about the company and what it is that they're building beyond the nuts and bolts of the product or the service that they're creating. And I get it. Like you're taught how to code, you're good at leading those types of teams, but very few times since those roles have not always been traditionally forward facing. Like Like there was a time where there was no one other than the founder that was having conversations with potential hires unless it was somebody in HR. They weren't having conversations with investors. They weren't having conversations outside of their internal teams. So they've never had to be equipped to know how to talk about it in story form. They oftentimes have never thought about like, what is my actual unique point of view in the industry that we're in? And I heard someone say the other day, and I told them I'm stealing it. They said, and when they're not taught how to tell these stories, and they're
Yeah.
not taught to really think about beyond the scope of what it is that they're building, they just become corporate branded parrots. Meaning the only thing that they know to say is what people can already find on the website. The only
Mm.
talking points that they're equipped with is something that maybe somebody from the comms department told them to memorize, but they're not really equipped to know how to tell things in story form or be able to say, well, as a leader that's been in this industry for 15, 35, 40 years, here's what it is that I think people need to recognize of where we're going, or if this doesn't happen, this is going to happen. They've only been
Right.
taught to think
Right.
about the technical details of, like you said, the features and the benefits. And that's not what's going to attract top talent. That's not what's going to make, you know, the perception that is being built outside of your organization one that makes it look like you're reputable and trusted.
So part of our role is to pull that out of those types of people, right?
Yep.
Um, and I actually, one of the roles I have is I'm like one of the producers of those videos, partly because I know where those people are coming from, and I know the story that they need to tell is right in here. It's, your point is they're just not necessarily comfortable storytellers.
Yeah.
Um, so I will literally poke at that until I get the story, and it's there. It's always there. uh, they came to that organization because the technology that they're working on is solving something that's very important to them. It
Yeah.
isn't a feature that they may describe that as a feature and a benefit, but I can tell you if you work with them long enough in conversations, it's amazing. And as soon as you crack the nut on that, crack the code on that, they talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
They'll talk about where I was before, and I had no latitude to grow my ideas, and okay, here it comes. And then he says, so I guess those problems that you had before about controlling your ideas and latitude, you don't have that. That's right, I don't have them here, and I'm able to now off. Then the story comes. Then the
Yeah.
story comes. So part of my success on being able to pull that out, like I said, is because I have those stories, and I've had those engineering people work with me in other companies, and I know that if you sat down with, I won't use their names, but if you sat down with John over a beer, it wouldn't take long for John to just come out of that and tell that. So I know it's in there. It
Yeah.
just it needs to be, and I must say, some of them struggle with the recording of the videos, and they shouldn't,
Yeah.
because if they're just the way they are, that's the attraction. That's the mechanism to attract. So don't
Exactly.
don't appear to be more polished than you are, or more dressed up than you are, or just tell the story like you are, and it's going to attract certain people to that story, to who you are, how you told it.
It's what
That's
makes you
that's the key,
relatable. It's what makes
right?
you relatable.
It is.
15 years ago, everybody wanted polished videos and perfect lighting and perfect this. I think now people want to just be able to relate to you as the individual, and they can see through performance. And I think that that's
Yep.
what, that is so important for our founders and their core leadership team to hear, is that this is not about performance. This is about being yourself and being relatable, because people want to come work for companies that the leaders are people that they feel like it's somebody that they can follow, that it's someone
Mm-hmm.
that they feel like that they can work with. And if you're only just going to regurgitate what it is that you think they need to hear, it's not
Yeah.
going to attract them. As a matter of fact, it's going to repel them because they can smell through that.
Well, and they may join and find out, what the heck is this? This isn't this isn't what you said it would be. This is
Not
a
what you
this
said.
is terrible disappointment, right? No, you're absolutely right. I mean, being honest and open with what the environment is like and what you're truly like is the only way to attract talent that relates and understands what you're going to do and what your vision and missions are. So you
Yeah.
have to be honest with that. Yeah.
When you're looking at using storytelling as a talent strategy, I think it's important to recognize that high performers have options. And so, what do you think they're actually listening for when they're hearing these stories to evaluate whether it's a company that they want to consider working for?
But that's a really good question because you're right. There are lots of choices, and but there are lots of choices when you're just comparing what you've done in your career
Yeah.
and what you need to do somewhere else. The choices are a lot less when you're actually looking for something that relates to who you are. And
Mm.
that that in and that's the kind of candidate that Pivot and Edge wants to attract for our customers. Like there's lots of candidates out there. They swipe right, apply to this job, apply to that job, and through our operational process, we interview some of those people, and and you've heard this many times, I'm sure, but they'll say, "So what do you like about Pivot and Edge?" Well, I don't really know much about it, and our operations team would be interviewing that, thinking, there's videos for you to watch. There's stories about the C-suite you could read. And you're sitting there saying, I don't know much about it. I don't want you.
Yeah.
Our customers don't want you. Our customers want people that actually are trying to figure out. They're going to LinkedIn. They're looking at your corporate page. They're trying to figure out who you were, where you came from. That researching kind of capability or researching candidate is the kind of candidate we want to attract, and it truly is the kind of candidate our customers want, our companies want. So I think to your point, it limits the numbers of candidates that are attractive, but I think it's the right way to go, and it's that candidate that truly is looking for the fit and the culture, not as much as I have 3 years of that, 4 years of that. I can code in this. I like that's not the candidate our customers want.
Yeah. I want to unpack something that you just said in that last statement of, you said something about like a post or something on LinkedIn. One of the things that I want companies to understand is that the storytelling that is either going to attract a candidate or repel a candidate, and it's going to be the same for customers, investors, and anyone else that is judging you, quote unquote, from the outside, is that it's not always going to start and stop with the touch points of the hiring process. Many candidates are also looking at the people who say they work here. What are they posting? How are they commenting? Do they, there's a lot of things that tell the story beyond just the verbal story that people are telling. So what do you say to the founder that thinks that the talent strategy or the hiring strategy should only rest on HR, and they shouldn't waste their time making sure that the core leadership team as a whole is equipped to be able to tell stories and communicate well externally like we're talking about today?
Well, I'd start with you're absolutely wrong if that's what you think, if that's what you think the process is. Um, and we actually run a training seminar on cleaning up your LinkedIn profiles because we know that to be true. We know that they don't stop with the hiring process at all. They absolutely sniff around to every component piece they can. The
Mhm.
founder, then they go to the C-suite. They look at how many people are employed. They look at their customer base. They do all that, and we know that. So part of our entire operational process is we go through and we do a forensic look at all the C-suite and all anybody that's involved in the hiring process and look at their LinkedIn profile. And honestly, some of them are just terrible. Uh, Many of them don't even have pictures.
No, and if they do, it looks like it was taken in a backyard barbecue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I'm preaching to the converted here.
Yeah.
So yeah, we help them clean all of that up because at the end of the day, you want to attract the right talent, and the talent's going to be looking for those kind of things, and that's a key piece of the puzzle for sure.
I saw a major corporation. It's probably been 4 or 5 months ago. Like, heck, who knows? Maybe it was six. I don't know. Time means nothing to me anymore. Um, but it was a major corporation, Fortune 100 company, and they had just laid off thousands of people. And, for a number of reasons that, technology, different reasons that they were reducing their workforce.
Sure.
And their VP of engineering commented on the post and said, "That's great." Now, I'm going to give this person, I hope I didn't say I didn't even say the name of the company, so it doesn't matter. I would hope that he did not literally mean that's great that thousands of people lost his job. What I know he did not think about was that he has the intel of why they let go of these people and the positive reasons why this workforce reduction needed to occur. But he
Yeah.
did not think about the fact that his comment could have been perceived as, what type of culture does this organization have that somebody at the top of their food chain thinks it's great? And if you're not watching the video, you can't see my sarcastic air quote, that it's great that people lost their jobs. And so I think that they have to recognize that that's part of the story that they're telling about the company and what it would be like to work there as well, based on what they're posting or how they're even commenting on someone else's post. All of that tells a story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And certain people in roles of certain responsibilities, neglect to understand the scope of their responsibility, and they think those kind of things don't matter,
Yeah.
or what, no one's looking at me, I can say what I want. But that's not true at all. And today's candidate workforce looks at all of that. Looks at all that. In fact, they'll even look at Instagram posts. They'll look at Facebook stuff if they can find it. Um, we don't do a lot on the other platforms because LinkedIn is primarily our focus on work. But there are candidates that will, try to find you on your personal Facebook feeds and see what you're doing and so on. It's not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
Yeah. If an employer was like, "Man, I didn't never even thought about my employer brand prior to hearing EA and Shayna have this conversation, and I think I want to upgrade our employer brand." So if a leader or a company is listening to this and they actually want to upgrade their employer brand in the next quarter, what's one thing that they could do immediately that could begin to upgrade that employer brand?
Besides call me, is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes. We're gonna get to
Okay.
that.
Besides calling me, um, uh, I think you need to be aware of what your social platform looks like.
Mhm.
And I think you should take an opportunity to tell your story. You probably told it, if it's at the C level, you're telling it all the time. You're telling it to investors, you're telling it in social settings. Your spouse or partner is probably exhausted hearing about it. Um, and so it's right on your fingertips. You should get it into some format that people can hear it and see it, and you should connect it somehow to your social platform. That's what I would do. I literally would put my phone up, hit record, and start telling that story, and I'd tell it till I liked it, and and get that recorded in as simple a format as you can, and send a link to things and get it so people can actually watch it and tell. That would be my first. I think it's really easy to do. It's pretty straightforward, and it starts to build your brand. Um,
Yes.
there's there's we do offer this service called the Hub, and it takes content stories like that and amplifies it. And there's a strategy for doing that. It's more complicated than just posting that video, but it's leveraging your whole ecosystem, so that ecosystem is sharing that story. So
Yeah.
you go from sharing it to hundreds to thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, and that really helps build the brand quicker than you think. So that would be my, take one away, do a video tomorrow, and see if you can get that out in social and see what kind of responses that you get from that. Um, can I just so telling the story here? So here's one of the challenges we often face is that I refer to the telling a story as the problem with telling it is people are constipated because they think the story will change.
Yeah.
And I would like to tell you that absolutely the story will change.
Yeah. It should.
So don't say, oh, I better not tell it because I might have a different version of that. And my experience actually with even doing customer visits in my career as we were building the companies, I would literally get on an airplane and change my presentation after a customer meeting. And this is when I was running sales and marketing, so I reported into a CEO. And I remember the CEO one time saying to me, "Oh my gosh, EA, can you stop changing the story? I can't keep up." And my response to that is, well, when a customer makes me smarter today than I was yesterday, I'm changing my story.
That's right.
So these founders should feel that same way. They should feel like I'm going to tell this story until something makes me smarter about that story, and then I'll fix it. But let's
Exactly.
tell it as I know it today. So don't
Exactly.
don't not tell it.
And I would say, as one of the tips that I would give as to how you can begin to upgrade and something that you can do immediately is ask every person that is on your core leadership team what their unique point of view is about your industry or
Hmm?
about what it is that they're building. And if they can't clearly and concisely communicate that to you in less than 30 seconds, then there's some work to be done because all of that is going
Absolutely.
to be incorporated into the story that is being told. And you'll be able to tell right away whether or not they've given any thought to the pieces that would go into a story beyond the features and benefits of what it is that you are selling or
I'll,
putting out into the world.
I'll give you a classic example of that. So Pivot and Edge is almost 9 years old. And I was in a meeting the other day with an operations person, and I thought to myself, that was a terrible explanation of how we do this.
Correct.
So I thought, I tell this freaking story every day, I'm sure. And for some reason, it's disconnected with that individual. I don't know how. So after that, I got off the phone and I said, now, why did you say that? Well, that's no, no. And then I told it again, and I thought, and we're not a giant corporation, so I can tell the story to every individual in my company, and I could probably tell it to them every single day.
Yeah.
But to your point, somehow they missed that piece. Now I'm sure if I asked them tomorrow, how would you say that today, or how would you tell that piece of that to that customer, they'd understand. But for some reason, that got missed. So you're absolutely right. I mean, even you think you're doing it enough, you're just not. And I would add to your point, the only other thing I would ask them is I would ask them why they joined.
Yeah.
And I would hope that lined up right with my story about why I'm doing this.
Yes.
And I hope it does. I hope the response isn't I needed a job, or like that would be a crushing moment for me to
Yeah.
hear that, right? I don't, and our customers are the same. They do not want people running away from something. They want people running to something.
Do something.
And we
Yeah.
have to create the story so that they want to run to it.
That's so
And
good.
that is so key in a successful startup or early stage company.
Well, that is the mic drop right there. So now let's get to they got to call you. So if they want to, first of all, if they want to follow you on social media, where do you recommend they follow you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yeah, they can
And
look me up. I'm
what's
probably
your name there?
it's EA, no period, EA Clarke with an E
Okay,
on the
perfect.
end of Clarke, Clarke. They can follow
Perfect.
me there. They can message me there. They can send me an email to EA Clarke at pivotandedge.com and I'll respond there.
Okay,
And
perfect.
I'd love to just hear stories about their successes as much as this isn't about, you know, can someone hire us as a service? I'd like to connect with more CEOs that either haven't have struggled to tell the story or have successes where, you know what, when I tell my story, I get the best hires. You're
Yeah.
right. Like I'd like to hear both sides of that. I'd love to hear from them.
Awesome. So if people want to take things further with you, is that what you would like to offer?
Yeah,
Is for
just
them to
email me.
email you or DM you? Okay, perfect. Well, we are going to make sure that all of that information is in the show notes. So all they have to do is click it and they don't have to be like, did it have an E? Did it not have an E? Was it AEEAIAOO? What they don't have to even guess all that. I'm going to make it easy for them. So I thank
Okay.
you so much for being here and sharing your nuggets. I know that this episode is going to be a hit. Everyone, I want you to share this far and wide with every tech leader you know. And the reality is that even non-tech companies need to be taking these things into consideration because everybody is in a war over talent right now, and the companies that win in the next decade are the ones that are going to recognize that their external influence is just as important, if sometimes not more important, than the product that they are building or the service that they're selling. So share, share, share. I hope that you will go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Everyone have a great day. Bye bye.